So basically that's what Chris and I have been working on all day today. And then this week is making sure we have everything in line for Black Friday promotion. I met with she's technically like a brand strategist. Her name is Alex. I met with her today and we went over everything. It's one of those things where like, I feel like I'm not making any progress with anything. And then I talked to her and I realized like, oh my gosh, like we've done a lot since I talked to her last month. So the first thing worth mentioning, and I'll kind of get this out of the way and then we can open it up for questions or whatever. You guys know that the planner, I actually just got mine a couple days ago. The planner is now available. This is exactly what I wanted in a planner for myself. I've always used the Day Designer. I usually promote the Day Designer every year as an affiliate. But this year I was like, no, I want to be able to offer something where women can really like prioritize their menstrual phase. Like I want them to be able to see like I'm in luteal phase and then plan out their workouts according to that phase and then plan out their priorities for the week and their dinners and all that kind of stuff. So basically you guys have probably seen the pictures that I posted in the group, but I have the hard copy here. And then the back of the planner has like an entire meal planning section with grocery lists and all that kind of stuff, which is cool. Totally my jam. So anyway, that's now available. We're doing these orders weekly. So like when, on Sunday nights, like we take however many orders we got that week and we place the order for however many we're going to order. And so it's taking about 2 weeks to ship. So that's the planner. Now the next step for that is we're putting that into a funnel. So if you remember, I don't know if you've ever seen, if you go to sync.jennyswisher.com/cookbook, you'll see our cookbook funnel from last year. I can pull it up actually, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. Makes more sense to show you versus tell you. But this is what I mean by a funnel. Hang on a second. So don't mind my millions of podcasts up on the screen. Chris gets so mad about my desktop. Okay. So this is a funnel for the cookbook last year. So basically it's just a really simple 1-page deal. They can buy the cycle syncing cookbook, or they can buy the combination for a discount. They just put in their information, their name, their email, their phone number. If they do that, it takes them to, I think I can do a fake thing here. It takes them to, they put their card number in, they do all that kind of stuff. And then the next page, I don't have a credit card to pop in here, but the next page offers them what's called a one-time offer. So most people last year, they would land on this cookbook, right? They would say, okay, I want to do this cycle syncing cookbook, but actually the majority of people would upgrade and do both, the combination of the cycle syncing cookbook plus the hormone healthy holiday cookbook. So, and then the next screen, once they enter their credit card information, it says, by the way, would you like to use our one-time offer to purchase the Sync digital course? And it gave them a discount on the course since they purchased the cookbook. So that's the funnel that we did last year for the cookbook. And it was really good. It was successful. I just used it within my warm market. We didn't even promote it through any sort of ads or anything. This year, there are ads running for it. And you might see it at some point. But we're also basically duplicating this for the planner. So people can purchase the planner, and then there will be an option for them. By the way, would you like to add a cookbook? By the way, since you already have your credit card in here, would you like to consider the course as well? And it'll be a discount on the course. So there is going to be, you guys, Kara, I know you've gotten like your Shopify link because you're like the newest Sync certified coach. So you've gotten more links than everybody else has gotten. But this week, Chris will be emailing out all of the different affiliate links for these different funnels. So you'll have a cookbook funnel link that's for you. You'll have a planner link for the funnel that's for you. All that kind of stuff is coming this week. He's actually working on it right now. So those are kind of the new things for Black Friday. That's the only deal on the course. Is if they purchase a planner or if they purchase a cookbook. Does that make sense? Otherwise, you guys have your usual code to give out if you want to give the code, that we, you have that all the time to use for the course if you'd like. So that's happening. The other thing is, let me look at my notes here. Chris and I are currently looking at a new manufacturer for our scope, the little sync scope thingy. We're really close to running out of our inventory for that. So when we are out, it will go MIA on Amazon. We'll have to like close it down until we get more inventory. The biggest issue is that the company we get it from does not allow us to brand it. So we have to order like thousands of them in order to get like my logo on it. So I don't care about having my logo. I just don't want their logo. You know what I mean? And so it says like Moon Baby on it. And then people ask me like, is this the right thing? Did you mail this to me? Well, now that Amazon is fulfilling shipment, it makes it confusing because people think they're getting the wrong thing. So we're looking at like finding a new manufacturer for that. Ideally, it would be somebody in the US. So that's something that I talked to my strategist about today. She's connected me with a couple of people for that. So that's happening, but right now it's still available. We still have a few. And the app is one thing that I wanted to tell you guys about. So we are using a platform, and I especially since you guys are Beachbody coaches, I want to share this with you because this is going to be so cool. And Chris and I are going to find a way to, like, there should be a way for all of you as Sync certified coaches to be able to access what we're doing, even though Chris and I are the ones paying for the actual thing. So it's called passion.io. If you go to your web browser, or I can do it, or you can look at it on your own time, it's just passion.io. And it is a new tool that allows you to create your own app. So this is what we're using for our app. This is something that, like, we met with developer after developer after developer about our app. We completed wireframes and design with like a designer, like an app designer, which is like the front half of the project. And then you get to the point where you have to have a developer to do all the coding. And it's like talking to someone who speaks another language. And in reality, it's like almost sometimes two languages, because they really do speak another language in our case, and they also speak technical. So we got to the point where we were just like, okay, we have this all wireframed out. Like, why isn't this easier? And my brand strategist connected me to someone else who was like, you need to use this Passion.io. So this is what we're working on. Chris is hopefully going to have it. I would hope that we're going to be able to launch this in January. So it's really cool. But the reason I'm telling you guys about it is because I think it's going to be really cool for just other stuff, whether it's challenge groups, like potentially moving over the Sync course into this platform, or moving over the community aspect into this platform. It allows you to create like an app on your own. Like this friend of mine, if you guys listen to the podcast, I've interviewed her before. Her name is Anna Fulmer. She came from, she works for the Faster Way network marketing company. She's coming out with her own app next year using Passion.io, where it's like, she was explaining it to me and I was like, this is like bod groups, like with, there's no workouts in it, but it's basically like a women's community for exercise and nutrition. So it's like an accountability app. So all of that to say, as we get building this out, like as we get the actual app done, we're going to be learning more about the features of this Passion.io, and we already are going to have access to it. So I foresee some changes. Like I foresee having a different community feel, having, you can see where it says like it does automated challenges, it has push notifications, it does live streaming, it does video. Like this app is going to allow us to have the ability so that when a woman logs in to track the day of her cycle or whatever, like there's going to be a video of me talking about ovulation, and ovulation is the 5th vital sign, and here's why it's important. So it's going to be a really great like educational tool, check-in tool. I mean, how cool is it that we can like put it all into the actual app? So I think that's really cool. What'd you say, Kara? Hang on, let me see here. Yeah, I mean, I think that, my feeling on Facebook is I've always run everything on Facebook. I did give bod groups, like I gave it all my all. I tried really hard. but there's just that social component that's just so different, and people are already on Facebook. So it's really hard to be like, hey, remember to check into this other app, like after you scroll your Instagram and your Facebook. So I stuck to Facebook forever, but I really do see things moving in this direction. I don't know if you guys listen. Do you guys listen to Brendan Burchard podcast? Okay. So recently, I don't know if you've noticed, but the beginning of his podcast, he has like an ad of him talking about how he got really sick and tired of feeling like Facebook was stealing his customers and feeling like he had no control over the Facebook community. So he started his Community for Growth Day. He created his own app, and he created, he's using Circle for Community, which is another community-based app. So he's doing that, right? And I'm seeing like Pat Flynn is the creator of Circle, and he's part of Smart Passive Income. He's kind of on this entrepreneurial. So people are starting to kind of move away from the social platforms because of the privacy issues, because of the fact that we have no control. Like Mark Zuckerberg could shut it down and we have no email addresses, we have nothing. So I see this being really valuable, because I think if a woman is already going to be like, here's the thing with bod groups, I have to tell somebody, okay, you're going to go to bod for your workout, and then you're going to go to bod groups and log it and tell us about it. And then they're already on their social media. So it's like so many different things that you're asking them to do. Whereas I feel like with this, it makes total sense, because a woman is going to log her period. She's going to log her cycle. She's going to use this app for everything cycle syncing to figure out what she should eat today, to figure out what her workout should be today. This is all in one place for her to do that. And so the social component can already exist within that. You know what I mean? Like the community can already be there. So I think it'll be really cool. Obviously, we'll learn more about it as we're actually building this out and putting it into place. We just personally made a big shift. We are making a big shift over to, we're using ClickFunnels 2.0. So we've been using ClickFunnels for these sales funnels and everything for a couple of years. But as of right now, my email marketing is with MailChimp. My course is in Thinkific. I have Passion now for the app. I have ClickFunnels. So Chris just decided that with ClickFunnels upgrading recently, now they do everything. They do email marketing, they do course platform, they do everything. So we've just upgraded ourselves to ClickFunnels. So we're moving everything over. So he's in the process of like converting everything over to one place while he's also taking on this app thing. So lots of things are like happening right now, even though it doesn't seem like it. And so we're hoping that the app will release sometime in January. There will be email marketing drips associated with that. So, I mean, I think it'll be cool, because when people get the app, oh, this is another cool thing. I don't know if you guys, what apps are using right now for like period tracking and all that, but a lot of times it's frustrating, because like if there's an app update or something, you can lose everything you're journaling. That's happened to me so many times. And it's for me really frustrating, because I know when my last period was, but I journal like my migraines, I journal like the issues that I have so that I can look at patterns. And it got really frustrating to like open up my app one day and be like, crap, like everything's lost. I got to start over. So one of the things that we're looking to do is do a monthly email, so that on the first of each month, a woman gets emailed her last 30-day log. So basically it's like her own journal, which to me helps you with like body awareness, right? It helps you see those patterns because we're emailing you what you journaled. So I think that's going to be really cool. And I think there's value in that too. So this is going to give us the flexibility to kind of do these cool things, like to have video and to have, downloadable data and stuff like that. We are not, and the other thing that I love about this too, is that we are not collecting the data. So we won't actually own people's information. We'll own their email, like we'll have access to their email, but I won't have access. Like right now, if you were to use like my flow tracker, everything you put in there, like if you put down, like I bled heavy today and I had a migraine, whatever, like the person who owns that app can see what you're putting into the app. Like you're giving your privacy information over to them. But for this, because we're using this platform, we only get certain things. We get like your email address, we get the stuff we need, and we leave out what we don't, which helps too from like a privacy perspective for people. And then the last thing that I love about it is, and I just learned about this today. I think I told you guys last time that what makes this unique is, I can't help a woman cycle sync if she doesn't know if and when she's ovulating. So your period matters almost zero when it comes to like, if you're having a period, great. But if you're not ovulating, we don't know if your hormones are surging or not. So we don't know how to sync you to your cycle, right? With your workouts and stuff. So the ovulation piece is sort of like the cornerstone of this app. So yes, a woman can put in her period, like my period was on October 1st, but more importantly, she's going to be able to put in when her ovulation is based on basal body temperature or saliva pattern. So one of the questions we originally had was, how do we educate people on those two methods? So being able to have video where I can talk about those two things. And then this is the cool part. Passion lets you put a sort of marketplace within your app. So we can actually have like, there will be a button that says shop, for example, and it will bring up the cookbook, the scope, the course, like all the different things that we offer from like a saleable perspective will also be there within the app. And the person using the app never leaves the app interface. So when they pull up our sync app, if they click on shop, it doesn't take them to Shopify. It doesn't take them out of that into a new browser. It keeps everything within the app. So the marketplace is actually within the app. Does that make sense? So we're just super excited. I think it's a really cool thing. And I think there's so much potential for more than just the app piece. I think there's a cool community aspect too that will probably come about. So that leaves us to, let's see. So app, planner funnel, cookbook funnel, working on a new device. I think that's pretty much it as far as updates. One thing that I know Kara and I have talked about, and I'll mention it here so everybody can hear it. I didn't know, like when Beachbody announced the new changeover to body, I wasn't really sure. I still was like, okay, cool, but I really need to know more. Like that was my reaction at first. Like, this sounds great, but I really need to know what this is going to look like. So with the launch of Healthy Obsession, being able to see the calendar that they've created for it, I think it works really well. At least this program works really well, that whole body block concept with cycle syncing. So if you're looking for a way to merge, right, like continue promoting your challenge group, continue taking sort of the Beachbody angle and promoting hormone health, to me, a 30-day challenge that's using these body blocks is the way to go. Now, in that, you would have to, explain to your group that they would start the program on their 3rd or 4th day after bleeding. So, depending on when a woman's period is, she may not be starting the group at the same time as someone else. So if you wanted to marry those two things, that's what I would do. Does that make sense? So day 1 of Healthy Obsession would be day 3 of her cycle. But it looks, the 4th week is that sort of active recovery week. It's perfect for sort of your PMS week. I saw a sneak peek at the Sure Thing calendar today, and it looks to be pretty similar. So I think they're kind of catching on to this, like this whole, it's called periodization training. But it also, that type of training works really well with cycle syncing. So, Kara, you were saying like, it's really hard to like promote a program, right? Like it's really hard now that you know what you know, it's like really hard to be like, come do 6 weeks of the work with me, right? Because you're like that doesn't really mesh with the female cycle. So if you're looking to kind of marry the two things, I think these body blocks are a good start.
Yeah, and that's like, I'm kind of exactly in that transitional phase right now where like I'm running my last challenge group of 2022. And so I've started incorporating into my bod group, like here are some basic concepts at the very least. If you know 0 as a base level of knowledge about cycle syncing, at very least give yourself a break on days 1 and 2 of your period, and then we'll talk more from there. But those body blocks that you're talking about, is that maybe I just need to look through the body calendar. Is it actually in like if I turn my mixed bike screen around, like, and scroll through it, that's where it's at.
Yeah, if you go to like your body, you can click on like today I just sorted it by trainer and I selected autumn and it popped up with like the first 6 or 7 days like in a row of the program. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I did the first day today to see how it was, and it was like a total flashback moment of like, oh my God, this is why I sort of hated this program. I mean, I love the program, but hated the program. um, I will say that it was like my biggest fear was, you guys know, like I love Autumn as a trainer. Like I think her workouts are great, but sometimes can't listen to her for the full hour. So I was like, oh, do I really want to do this? But it was a lot better than I thought. It was good. It was intense. I think it was like close to 400 calories in an hour. So, I mean, it was moving and grooving, but yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I was told, and you guys, I've said this before on here, but I'll mention it again. I was told by my corporate rep at Beachbody, I was looped into an email strand and was told that the cycle syncing component of fitness will be coming in 2024. So I think this periodization training, this body block stuff that they're doing, like based on what I've seen, I think that's like they're doing that sort of in preparation for perhaps, incorporating that. You guys saw probably where the Dr. Emily, I think is her name, like from Beachbody, did that live stream on the Beachbody page. So I feel like they're creating awareness, and then they're kind of going to this periodization training. So it's coming. So I feel like that makes the most sense to promote. Doesn't mean that the old programs don't work, but it's just, I feel like somebody, a person has to understand, like they have to have gone through the course, or they have to understand like how to make that program work for them and their menstrual cycle.
It's kind of nice to have like I was, this Jenny, I was like racking my brain with like, how do I marry these two things? But it's actually, as I've gotten into this group that I'm doing now, it's been nice to just like drop little nuggets and be like, hey, by the way, this is just the first layer of it. Like kind of like how people start with bod. Usually people just want to work out first, and then they layer the nutrition. And
Yep.
with this, it's similar because now it's kind of opening a whole world where they can be like, oh, well, okay, I could actually learn a little bit more about this, and I could be doing better in this other area. So,
Yep.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I always say it's like cycle syncing is like the next level, right? It's just like, it's like taking the next step of like, okay, you've got my nutrition in line, or, close enough, and I'm moving every day. And then, people start to pick up. I remember when I did 80-day obsession, when it first launched, like our team had a big challenge group for it. And I remember there are videos of 80-day obsession where Autumn talked about her period. Do you guys remember that? Where she would say things like, okay, you guys, I'm just going to be honest. Like today is a day I'm on my period, and I just don't feel good, and I feel bloated. And she would talk about things like that. And there were times when that would come up, like in those challenge groups, like, oh my gosh, it was so refreshing to hear Autumn say that, because I started my period last week and I felt like crap. Or like women started to like sort of notice because it was finally brought up by a trainer. So I feel like it's sort of this organic thing that can happen, right? Like where women start to feel better, but then they start to notice like, gosh, I feel really bad during this time of my month, or I feel really tired. So then when you explain, it's like, it makes sense. But that's why I think the body blocks is so cool, because it's like I say this in the course, like just start. And then as you're learning, you'll be like, oh, this is why we're doing it this way, right? Like I always say, like start the calendar. And then when you're through that first month and you're learning in the course, you're going to be like, oh, this is why we had a rest day today. This is why we had this. It's like that with the body block. It's almost like you're handing somebody something and you're saying, okay, what day of your cycle are you on? Right. And you could kind of match it up to the calendar. You could say, here's where you're starting on the calendar. And then it makes sense to them because they get to that active recovery week, most likely leading up to their period. And they're like, this actually aligns with how I feel. Or at least that's the hope.
I feel like it's taken me like a little while to get over this mental block of whenever I run my groups, it's by program because that seems to be what people rally around the most. And so I feel like this entire week I've been doing a lot of Shalene, like Pyo and yoga from, I think, the Fat Burn calendar. And I'm logging this stuff in the bot app because that's where I run my groups, but I'm like trying to get over this guilt of doing something different than them. And I think like not guilt, but just like lack of cohesiveness in the group when I'm like, yeah, I'm doing it with you. But in reality, I'm like, hey, I'm doing something different. But I think it really could be couched as like, here's why. You guys keep doing what you're doing. I'm going to keep dropping nuggets.
Yeah.
And then, I'm going to roll this out to you.
Yeah.
More information.
Yeah. I mean, my personal feeling is, and I'll be candid about it. And so I'm going to talk at Super Saturday about this in January. They've asked me to talk about like niching down. I had to hear this personally like 75 times before I was finally like, oh, okay, this is what I'm going to do. Because I just didn't believe that being more specific about who I was after and what I was leading with was really going to give me bigger results. Like to me, like so much of my business for so long was like casting a wide net. Like I want to help everybody feel more confident. I want to, I've always been somebody that's not a before and after type. Like I was after, my niche was like confidence and personal development and that kind of thing. But I kept hearing over and over, like niche down, niche down, niche down. And it wasn't until 2020 that I was finally like, let's try it and see. Right. And I'm going to talk about this in January, but like my brand strategy company that I work with, the phrase that they're known for is they say, you are most qualified to serve the person you once were. And so I had to start thinking about like, well, who was I? Like, what are the things that I've struggled with? And it's easy to say like, oh, I haven't struggled with anything. Cause like, I really haven't had like a massive weight loss transformation. I haven't had, you could tell yourself all those things. I could tell myself like, well, I don't have 100-pound weight loss journey. But what I do have is I have a really shitty migraine struggle. Right. And I have a really crappy hormone imbalance thing that just plagues me. And so, it doesn't have to be health-wise either. It can be anything. It can be horses. It can be whatever. But I was like, okay, well, and that's how it started for me, was running a Beachbody challenge group in 2020, where I just was like, does anybody want to learn about like hormone health in this group? And so instead of leading with a program, I started to lead with an idea. So like, not just a theme, not like, motivational group or whatever, like not, we're not going to like, it's not going to be like a Stranger Things Facebook group, right? Whatever. It's like, instead of a theme, it was more like me serving the person that I once was, like me explaining something that I've learned. And that was the theme. And it just happened to be that you needed Beachbody On Demand to do it with me. Does that make sense? As opposed to leading with the Beachbody On Demand or the program and then rallying people around that program. I do think that used to work. I think 21 Day Fix was proof. I think 80 Day Obsession was proof, right? Autumn's programs tend to be the big ones that people rally behind. I think that worked for a really long time. I think coming out of the DVD era is when it worked, because in the DVD era, which I was around for, programs would literally launch. Like, you know what I mean? Like the P90X DVD set would launch, the P90X3 DVD set would launch. And so you did have to kind of rally behind the programs. But now that we have the live classes and the body blocks and the bike, and there's so many different things that it's like, I think we kind of have to consider stepping out of leading with the product and instead say, who is Kara? Like, what does she represent? Who is she wanting to serve? And be super specific about it, I just interviewed this lady on my podcast, and she is all about, like, she's niched even further down into hormone health. She's all about fertility awareness method. But she's all about fertility awareness method to prevent pregnancy. So she's very specific, like, I'm hormone health, but I'm dedicated to helping women who do not want pregnancy, like women who are looking to use this as alternative to birth control. And that's her niche. Like, that's specifically who she talks to. And so it's even more niche than mine, right? Like it's really detailed down to that person. So I just think like when your language starts to be like your coming out post about getting certified and like doing the hormone stuff was like, you had great traffic on that post. You had a lot of interest. You had, you're piquing people's ears because it's different. It's new. It's something that you're getting into. And I think that like leading a group around this, like, hey, I'm just going to lead a basics to hormone health, like things that I'm learning through this course I'm taking. I'd love to teach you. When people reach out and you have the conversation, it just becomes, well, everybody joining this group needs this product to get into the group, as opposed to leading with that product. So I think I said it twice now, so I'll stop. But yeah.
Yeah, no, that was really helpful to hear you say that again, though. Because I mean, the way you were talking about, like, your niche is the fact that you struggled with migraines and this is your story, whereas I ended up in this course as well. But my story is I was always working towards alignment. Like I never had alignment with what I was doing.
Yeah.
And now it's just like teaching women to listen to themselves and their bodies instead of outsourcing. That has been an important thing for me. Because I never had migraine issues. I've always had regular periods. Like there's been no first like noticeable problem that I've struggled with.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that and the whole mental, like social component of women and how they treat themselves in life and in the workplace and all those things all has to do with being out of alignment and not using their voice. And like this, its base level really kind of teaches you to do that for yourself.
Yeah. Well, I always say, like, the phrase I like to hear, like that I've heard from Stacey Sims is, like too many women are working against their physiology. And I think that's a phrase that can work to your advantage in your marketing. Because I think women know when they're not in that alignment. Right. And it's like, they don't know how to explain it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're symptomatic or like having imbalanced signs or whatever. It's just that they know, right? Like that little ditty from Autumn saying on live cast 80-day obsession, like, man, it sucks to be on my period, right? It was almost like she didn't know what she didn't know, right? She didn't realize in that moment that like her menstrual energy is not aligning with the workout she just did, right? And there's a lot of women that are doing that. They know that they're off, they're out of that alignment and they need more energy, or they want to really maximize that energy. And so that's why they come to this. If you haven't read the book, I think it's called In the Flow by Alyssa Vitti. That might be more of your like niche with this, because she's all about, like, I call her hippy dippy, but I say it with love. She's very into like, how to really leverage your productivity and your creativity and the different energies of your cycle, more so than she is the fitness piece. There's all different angles for this, but she's very into that. So that's a good book. I'm finding a lot. I'm just going to say this in case it helps you guys too. Like when you're talking on social, like the more you're willing to open up about certain things, the better. This is like the number one thing that I'm hearing right now, or the number one thing that I'm getting in my DMs is women who are on oral contraceptives, or they were on them for a very long time. And let me just say that there have been like a lot of like aha moments from these women. So for example, there's one woman I'm thinking of right now. She's in her late 40s. She's been having migraine headaches around the full moon, like every month, which also happens to be her sugar pill week on her birth control pill. So of course she's ready, she's getting ready for her period. So it's following this pattern. So I started to notice that in her stories every month, she would talk about like, oh, I got a migraine. It's a 3-day migraine. And I was like, oh my God, like this is, to me, it's like so obvious. Like, I'm like, I know what she's going through, but she's just struggling. And I'm like, I see it like 2 months in a row. And finally I reached out, and I the first message I sent, cause you never know, like, I don't want to like push your buttons or anything. So I sent a message and I just said, hey lady, full moon. Makes sense. Full moon. And she wrote back and she was like, oh, I never thought of that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, does she know what I mean? And then the second month she says the same thing. Oh, my headache's back. So I messaged her again. I said, hey lady, full moon again. And so we had a conversation, and she told me, I'm on birth control. I have to be on it for XYZ reason, painful periods. She's like, I I noticed that you said that to me last month. I really need to dig more into that because I'm not sure what that means. So then I started talking to her about the different phases of the moon and her cycle. Long story short, we talked over and over for 3 or 4 months. She got really sick of dealing with this. I think it just like having somebody to talk to about it, like gave her the awareness of like, yeah, why am I living like this? Like this sucks. Like this is a cyclical pattern. So she went off of birth control. I'm not going to be the godmother of this child. So I've told her in advance, I'm like, this is not my fault if you come off of birth control and something happens. But she's come off of birth control and she's starting to use fertility awareness methods. She's they're using other forms of birth control. But she's like, this month, it was so funny because she did a little live stream in her stories last Tuesday at the full moon. And she was like, oh, hey, I'm getting ready to press play on my workout, making my Energize. And so I like waited and waited. She never said anything. And then the next day I saw her stories and she was talking again about feeling good, gonna go, we're leaving for this California today, blah, blah, blah. And finally I messaged her and I was like, it's been a full moon, like for 2 days. I'm like, how are you feeling? And she's like, oh my God, my period started today and I had no headache this month. And I was like, yeah. So just, you know what I mean? Like I share this because sometimes I feel like I see women in their stories or sharing on social media. And to me, it's so obvious that they're like, whether it's an imbalance issue again, or just living out of alignment like that, their energy is off and they don't even really see it yet. Like they're like talking into this camera at themselves and they don't see it yet. And so to have those conversations with them and to explain kind of what you're doing, I think is helpful too, because people need it. I mean, she's like, oh my gosh, she just did a live stream yesterday where she was, like, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for my friend who was telling me like she picked up on this pattern for me and I feel so much better this month and whatever. And it's like, the first step in the right direction to her figuring out why she has those painful periods as opposed to just sort of band-aiding them with the birth control. So I think we have to bring about more awareness for people. And we do that through sharing some vulnerable things. Like I need to make a post probably about my own birth control journey. That stuff made me batshit crazy. I was crazy.
I went on it for 3 weeks, like a month or 2 ago, postpartum.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm crazy. I can't. I'm crazy.
Yeah.
And I was like so much more aware this time, but I was like, did you guys see that dinosaur sneaking down?
I did. I just saw that.
He's such a little stinker.
Creeping
around the wall.
Did you have to go on it for IVF?
Yes, at times at the beginning. I care. So I've been able to kind of put together a lot of what I think my story was. I mean, I was on it for close to 10 years, probably at least 8.
Yeah.
And then came off it at the end for a couple of years before I came off of it. Right when we got married, I came off of it and had been working out very hard for a long time, for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the combination of when I came off of it, I never got a period.
Yep.
So I think that was a combination there. Right. And then was diagnosed with infertility and PCOS. So at the start of IVF cycles, went on birth control to shut everything down, both times. And then, like after Holly never got a period. So we went right to IVF with Hogan. After Hogan, I had all sorts of digestive issues, like bloating to the point of excruciating pain, literally every single day. So that's when I went the functional medicine route, and found the hormone imbalances. And so did acupuncture and functional medicine to try to get a cycle back. Well, try to fix the hormone, which ended up bringing back a cycle for the first time about a year after I had Hogan. And so then when I got my cycle back, it took about 6 or 8 months to get it down to like 28 days. It started at like 40 something. And then once I got that back, I got pregnant twice last year. So now I'm in that place of, I didn't want to go on birth control, but did because I now apparently can get pregnant very easily and don't want to do it.
You got your body figured out. Yeah.
So I'm like, I've gone from this problem of like trying to get pregnant for so long and couldn't. And now I'm like, well, shoot, I'm good at this now. So kind of in that place where like, I went on it out of desperation and was like, well, I don't like what this is doing to me. I feel crazy. I'm hot flashing, but I also really don't want to get pregnant again. So
Mhm.
trying to navigate what I'm going to do there.
You mean like like mucus tracking and temperature tracking and saliva tracking, all the things.
Yeah.
I just heard a podcast a couple days ago. You should listen to it if you want to feel like you're heard. It used to be called Healthy Hormones for Women. Now it's called Wellness Witch. And it's one of her recent episodes where she interviews this lady about, it's called, is it called like my IVF journey, real AF or something like that. Like it's like a really candid interview about this girl's IVF journey. She talks in there about birth control and PCOS and all the different things. I was listening to that, and we never did IVF. We did like ovulation injections and stuff, but just listening to her talk about like being put on birth control and then coming off. And she literally got to the point of like, she was like suicidal. She was having some major issues on the birth control pill. And I'm like, when I hear that, it makes me feel validated, because I literally thought I was going to go insane. And when I was in college, my roommate took me to like the campus psychiatrist, like out of desperation. Like I was that bad. Like I was so down, and I was having hot flashes at night in the cold dorm, like so miserable. And I never put two and two together. Like at that time in my life, I never was like, this must be the birth control pill, and I felt like everybody else around me, I lived in a sorority house with 75 women. Like everybody else was on birth control and nobody else was crazy, but I hear people's stories now and I'm like, I was not crazy. That's definitely what was going on for me for sure. But
I'm very curious this time around to see if a cycle comes back on its own, because I've never gotten one without a lot of work after pregnancy. So I don't have one yet, but I'm still nursing and stuff. So time will tell.
Well, they're saying, the statistic I heard the other day from Sarah Gottfried said that 39% of women on oral contraceptives are on it for reasons other than birth control. So period regulation, cramping, migraines, whatever, acne. And so I feel like this is such a need, because I feel like there's people out there that they just don't understand their body and their menstrual cycle enough. It's like, I'm in the same boat as you. Like I felt like I did not understand anything having to do with my body at the time. Now that I'm going to be 39, I told Chris, I'm like, too bad we are not wanting to get pregnant now, which we don't. Because I feel like now I understand my body. I understand that I have one ovary that works better than the other. I understand what months I am ovulating and what months I'm not. I understand what point in my cycle I'm ovulating. Whereas before I was like, I don't know, like the doctor would be like, have sex Wednesday at 10. And we'd be like, okay, you know what I mean? But I didn't know what my body was doing. So I wish that fertility, like infertility, whatever, doctors were more, would just educate you more on just your body. I mean, I understand the science piece and wanting to get you there faster and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I feel like there's this huge gap between, 90% of the women walking into those clinics probably have no clue what their body's doing.
And I cynically have to believe that they just make way too much money doing what they're doing, because if they educate you on it, then you don't need a $75,000 baby.
I know.
Got one.
I know. Yep.
I know. It's
well,
awful.
I really think
crazy.
it was, kudos to you for sticking it out. I feel like it was when they told me that I could have the migraines and the crazy again, and I had to go back on birth control, Chris and I shut it down fast. We were like, nope.
I mean, one drug they put you on, it was before IVF, but in infertility, I had to actually sign like a waiver saying like that it could make me emotionally unstable. And
the Lupron?
Psycho. I think that was Clomid. It might have been Lupron, one or the other, Clomid or Lupron.
Yeah.
And they make
my
you crazy.
Functional doctor told me, like when I told her we were considering IVF, she was like, I mean, you do what you want. That's what she said. She goes, but I'm just telling you, like, knowing how sensitive you are and your migraines, she's like, it could be bad. And I was like, that's all I need to hear, because I'm not doing it. So but anyways, I think I have a friend of mine actually through my hometown who's in her 20s, and she's very outward about it on social media, that like they're struggling. And I reached out to her last week and I was like, look, like, I think there's so much power in like understanding your body and what's going on and root causes of imbalances, right? You can't like tell people what to do, but at the same time, I'm like, I just want to help, because
Yeah.
Yeah. You're young, do something while you can. Okay, my friend.
Okay, I
Well,
do
you
have
should.
one question.
Yeah.
I completed the course this week.
Yay.
So step one, yes. My next step is to find a doctor to get the
Mhm.
testing done. A functional medicine doctor I used to go to. I was debating going back, and she actually just moved into downtown Chicago, and I'm not going there.
Okay.
And I don't know. I don't know if she does bioidentical hormones, but for some reason I get the vibe that like she wouldn't. I don't know. I'd
Okay.
have to look into it. So I've Google researched and not found anyone. The one I found around me that does it, it just felt based on her site, it seemed like she had her own thing that she was pushing. Like there was an agenda going
Okay.
on.
Okay.
And I called and it was like, we only take cash and it's $600 for your first appointment. And I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
My other one wasn't that expensive. But so I am switching insurance in January to a PPO anyway with an HSA. So I'm leaning towards just January's not that far away, although it feels
Right.
like it should be waiting. So at least if I'm paying out of pocket, it's counting towards a deductible or something, but haven't had luck finding somebody, which I feel like in the area I live in, there's got to be people, right? And the other one I found, have you heard of bioidentical hormones? That's like a pellet they insert under your skin.
Yep.
Okay, that seemed odd to me. I just hadn't heard of that.
So some people are
but-
into the creams, the troches, and the oral capsules, and some are into the pellets. It's just a
Okay.
preference.
Okay.
I've never had pellets. I've always done cream, but I know there's several people. You could even ask about it in the sync group. There's some women in there who
Okay.
testosterone pellets and stuff. But I would Google like apothecaries near you,
Okay.
compounding apothecary near me, and then call a couple of them. There has to be some near you.
Yeah, I've actually used a couple I must have been during AVF or so, or either when it was when I was working with the functional medicine.
Okay. So,
or maybe I don't know. I've used some. Yeah.
Okay. I would call them and ask to speak with like an official compounding pharmacist, not just a tech. And I would ask them, I'm looking for a functional medicine doctor in my area who is very knowledgeable with bioidentical hormone replacement therapy. And I'm curious, that maybe some names of some doctors that prescribe through you.
Okay.
And usually if you call a couple places, you might start to hear the same couple of names. That's usually a really good sign that that person is willing to order it for you and is knowledgeable with it.
Okay.
But you haven't had your cycle yet, but I mean, technically like the Dutch test is something that you can do on your own without a practitioner. So
Okay.
if you go into the sync group and search Dutch test, there's like $100 off code in there.
Okay.
But it's a home kit. So you can order it for yourself. It comes to you within a couple weeks. It's one of those things where it takes a couple weeks to get to you. And then when you get it, you have to pee on the little paper, on certain days of your cycle, and you send it off at the end of the 30 days. And then it takes another 2 to 3 weeks for them to send back your results. So if you're not going to see anybody until January or so, it's something you could consider doing just to see, that way it's done and you have your results back, and you could potentially take those in to that doctor and see what they say.
Is that something you would wait till because I'm kind of guessing my cycle.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it was Nicole, but there have been a couple people in the sync course who've been in your shoes where they were still breastfeeding. They weren't having their cycle or wasn't regular. They didn't know what to do. It's up to you. I mean, it's like, you can either wait until that happens, but even when it does happen, like you could still be irregular. But there's also instructions in the Dutch test that'll say like, if you're cycling, follow this path. If you're not cycling, follow this path. So
Okay.
there's an option for that. So that basically what they're going to do is they're going to create for you a graph based on those urine tests, those samples, that's going to show you what happened. So it's up to you to make sure that you're journaling what days you did. Does that make sense? Like,
Okay.
even
Yeah.
though, so it wouldn't be like the cycling female's day 3, but your day 3 happened to be, here. And that way, when you get it back, you might see like, oh, I did have this surge here. I did have this drop here, and it might correspond with what you're seeing with like your saliva and stuff too. So,
Okay.
there's been a couple people in the sync course who have been like amenorrheic, whether it's from training or whatever. And it's helpful because the Dutch test kind of shows them what's either happening or not happening.
Okay.
Which is helpful. So yeah,
All
so you
right.
could do that in advance, but I would call like an apothecary and just ask for a referral.
Okay.
And then the other, if that doesn't work, then I can give you a couple of recommendations of people who do like virtual appointments.
That's what I was going to ask you too.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about hormones is that, you know, you don't have to always be seen. Like it's not like
Mhm.
a breast exam or a pap or anything like
Right.
that. Like it's just like an appointment, you know, doctor appointment. So there are a couple of clinics that that I could give you information about if you don't find anything near you. But I would try to find somebody that's prescribing through like a local apothecary, and that way you know that you can maybe meet with them and get prescriptions through them if needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the doctors from my OB practice, she delivered Hogan actually. She went off on her own and created her own women's health. She's like, I'm done delivering babies. I want to dig more into women's health and take a more holistic approach. And I was like, oh, great. I started reading her website, and it was like a solution to every problem was like, maybe the birth control pill is right for you. And I was like,
No,
oh, no,
I know.
it's not holistic
And I feel
health.
bad for her. Like I feel bad for people because sometimes they just don't know. Like they just don't,
Yeah,
they don't get it.
no.
Yeah, I have to have that conversation with
Dang.
my OB like every year when I go in for my PAP. I just have to like, I go to her just for that. Like there's no other reason. She's never delivered a baby for me. It's just, I go there for that. Right. And I have to tell myself like every time I'm in there, she asks me about my bioidentical stuff. Why, you know, why am I still on it? I'm like, well, she doesn't, there's just parts of it she doesn't get. And when my headaches got bad in 2017, like I had years of feeling better, like on the bioidentical. When I came to her in 2017 and said, something's wrong, she was like, well, we need to reconsider putting you back on birth control. And I was like, no, like my chart should say like batshit crazy on birth control. Like, don't recommend that. And that was what she wanted to do. And I was like, no, I'm not. Yeah. So if it wasn't for the fact that my functional doctor is a drive, like it's like a 40-minute drive, I do all virtual appointments with her now.
Mhm.
I would have her do my PAPs, but my OB is like right down the street. So I do that every year. And that's like the only time I see her. But I've talked to her about like the podcast. I've talked to her about what I'm learning. I've talked to her about bioidentical, and it's just like, it's like out of her scope, you know, which is fine,
Yeah.
but I wish more.
My best friend's a doctor and I love her dearly, but we were talking this weekend and I was talking about probably going back to functional medicine because I'm having some of the same, like my digestive issues are back postpartum and all that. And she's just like, oh, I hate when my patients come to me and want me to order all these labs that their functional medicine doctor said to have. And da, 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 da. I was like, I know. It's a pain. Just order the labs for them, would you?
Do it. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. But if you have a sinus infection, it's great that she lives across the street.
Right.
So, you know, kid has an ear infection. I need her.
Yep.
But, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you find somebody because it can really
Thanks.
be a game changer to find the right
I
person.
know. And I should, well, I don't even, her email probably changed too, but I can reach out to my old functional medicine doctor, even on Instagram, and just ask her if she does bioidentical hormone replacement. I really like her, but sometimes I feel like she was kind of judgy. And so like, but I'm like, why do I care if she judges me? I literally never have to see her again.
Right. Yeah. Who cares?
It's that hesitation of like, what's she gonna say? But she'd be a good person to reach out to even ask for a referral. I can do it. I can put on my big girl pants and ask her. I literally have nothing to lose. I don't know why I have anxiety over it.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. She's
We'll
going to
literally never see her again.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. The other thing that I would consider is there's a new podcast out called The Root Cause. It's called, what is it called? The Root Cause Wellness Podcast. It's got a female host. They just did a thing on SIBO. They did a thing on like IBS, but she's very hormone, like 90% of the podcasts are women's hormones. So she kind of tries to make those connections. So they've got some really good stuff on there that might help too.
Okay.
But it would be interesting to know like what's happening for you hormonally. Cause I think there's a lot, like, for example, I get like certain times of my month, I get severely uncomfortable, like bloating wise, like severely uncomfortable. And to the point where I'm like, I don't even think I can work out because this is happening. So it'd be interesting to kind of see like what's digestive, what's hormonal, maybe, what comes to my mind is I'm working with this gut health doctor. We're creating this mini course, and we just recorded module 2 last week, and we talked about this. It's called beta glucuronidase, really long word, but she describes in the course like the importance of it and how it can actually, levels of that can actually be tested, but that enzyme or whatever you want to call it is a direct connector between the gut microbiome and estrogen. So the two and how they influence each other. So I think that's kind of where you're going to figure out for yourself. It's going to be somewhere in that like middle ground of like, how is my hormone situation affecting my gut? How is my gut affecting my hormone situation? Like that aspect of it is going to be sort of your key, I think. So the root cause wellness podcast is a good one. And then doing some research on this beta glucuronidase and perhaps asking about that, like when you do find a doctor, could be helpful too. Cause you're beyond the point of like food sensitivity things and all that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
I had literally a massively expensive and massive food
Yes.
sensitivity test done. And the only thing that came back was popped corn. The whole clinic was like apologizing to me. The doctor was like, I've never had this happen. I was sure you would come back with this whole list of things. And a lot of it just came back to cortisol and stress. And I can't remember exactly what they discovered with my cortisol. I want to say it was like rock bottom first thing in the morning. Is that bad?
That's bad. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it should be the highest in the morning and then slowly
Yes.
wane.
So it was like rock bottom first thing in the
Mhm.
morning when they tested.
That's
So I
common for a
know
lot of young moms to have like low cortisol. Yeah.
So I was on a cortisol support supplement with her before bed when I was working with her.
Mhm.
But
Was it like a pharmaceutical or a bioidentical?
I want to say pharmaceutical. It was like
Yeah.
Physicians. So it's a brand like Physician
Okay.
something. It's called
Okay.
Cortisol Manager, I think.
Okay.
I have to look.
But I mean, from the course
but-
that like if your cortisol's low, it's most likely pulling from those sex hormones.
Right.
So if your cortisol's low, then your body's going to say survival, and it's going to say no
Yeah.
ovulation.
I mean, every symptom you described in there of estrogen dominance, I was like, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
Everything.
So it explains your whole PCOS diagnosis. I mean, now after taking the course, like PCOS is really just a label put on a group of symptoms.
For sure. I knew that
But
early on. Yeah.
at the same time, if we do refer to it as a diagnosis, like it makes sense. Like it connects, in my mind, it makes sense as to why you're having the symptoms that you're having. Because it could either be like, for example, we're learning about me right now. Like I've been having these really weird, just in the last like 3 months. I go 3 weeks and I feel great. Like energy's great, sleep is great, no headaches, like everything's perfect for 3 weeks. And then I have a really bad week. I have like 7 days where I'll have like a migraine, and then I'll have vertigo, and then I'll be up all night. Like it's just the weirdest thing. It's like 7 days. And we finally figured out that it's around ovulation for me. And it's funny because 5 years ago, when I started having more headaches again, before we upped my progesterone dose to fix it, I would have a migraine at ovulation, but it would be like 1 or 2 days. And so now I was like, I kept telling Chris, I'm like, I don't know what's wrong, but it's like, I'm having that, but it's just dragged out over 7 days. Like so what's the deal? So I started saliva tracking, like during all 7 days, not just the first 2. I started doing, like temperature checking and using my Oura ring and the body temperature thing on there. And I started to notice this pattern where I have 2 or 3 days of a temperature surge, and my scope shows ovulation, which in the past I would see that on the scope and then I would stop using it. Like, okay, I'm in my fertile window. Well, I've continued to use it just to see what's going on with my body. What's happening is it's like I ovulate and my temperature spikes and my ferns show up, and then I dip for like 2 or 3 days with nothing on the scope and a lower temperature. And then I rise again and I have like 3 or 4 days of higher temp. and the scope is firming again, and then it comes down. So it's like this 7-day ovulation of like, I'm having multiple ovulations. So I did some reading yesterday, and I just saw where Laura Brydon talks about this in her book, Hormone Repair Manual. She talks about how women in their late 30s will actually go through like a surge of fertility. So your body is more prone to hyperovulation. So you can have like more than one follicle. And so I totally think that's what's happening, because I mean, I'm like, okay, well, the scope is showing that I'm ovulating like twice in a week. Like in October, it showed 3 times in a week, right? It's showing like my saliva pattern is on point with it. My temperature's on point with it, and then my headaches are clearly on point with it. So anyways, all of that to say that like, once you figure out sort of like what's out of like, are you ovulating, hyperovulating, or are you not ovulating at all? Like all that stuff can be really helpful to seeing those patterns and how they equate to like your digestive upset too. So yeah, you'll find somebody. And if not, you can virtually meet with somebody.
Yeah, that was going to be my
Yeah.
backup, was to see if you knew of places doing that.
Yeah.
So, okay, I'll reach out. I'll try this week. I'll reach out to a few. I'll try an
But
apothecary
estrogen
and I'll reach
dominance
out
is
to my
something
other
that, I mean,
doctor.
if you feel like that's what's going on for you, even
I
just
mean, based on the symptoms, like I absolutely feel
Yeah.
like that's what's going on for me.
if you have anybody, like even just a family doctor or anything, like just having them even do a blood draw can confirm that.
Okay.
You can, I mean, you're not having a cycle to be able to test on, the right day, but you should still be able to see like how low that progesterone number is and what you would just ask for progesterone and estrogen blood serum. If you are seeing like ferns on the scope, I would go 1 week from that and do the blood test. If you're not seeing the ferns on the scope, then it doesn't matter. You can just do it whenever and see what it says.
Okay. I've just started. It's not a habit yet.
My
So
bet
I'm
is
like,
based on
I'll
your
do it and then
history-
forget about it, or I'll
Yeah.
eat breakfast and forget about it. So I'm like, I don't know. I need a sticky note or something.
I put mine out by my toothbrush every night, and that's the only.
I did that still in the morning, and I'm like,
So based on your history and the birth control thing and everything, I mean, I just think this is so common for women. I think I think there are a lot of women not ovulating, and I think there are a lot of women who are estrogen dominant. Sarah Gottfried says 72%. 72% of women will experience estrogen dominance either before or during perimenopause. So
yeah.
odds are not in our favor.
No.
But there's things that you can do without a doctor. Like if you can confirm that through the blood serum, then there are some supplements I would tell you that you could probably start doing that you can just get over the counter to help those symptoms while you're waiting on like functional medicine stuff.
Okay.
So. Okay, cool. All right. I'm going to sign off.
Thanks. Yep.
Yeah, it was good to see you.
You too. See you in a
Yeah,
couple weeks. Have a
man.
good Thanksgiving. Hope everybody's
Yes, you
healthy.
too. Go hang out with your dino.
Yeah, you better be asleep. Done. Bye.
All right. Talk to you later.